The anti-racism activist and Kick It Out founder Lord Ouseley passed away at the age of 79. Darren, just sum up for us what he meant to football. He was a pioneer, wasn't he?
He really was. Lord Ouseley, I would say every black player in the country, and would not be hyperbole to say, in this current generation, needs to thank Lord Ouseley for the work that he did setting up Kick Racism Out of Football in 1993. He was chair of the organisation for 25 years. But as he put it, he fought for the game to actually recognise the problem of racist abuse, where the options for black footballers were to put up with it or to leave the game altogether, because there was nobody else prepared to do that. He'd had racism as a young man. He came to this country from the Caribbean. He went to school in South London. He suffered horrendous racist abuse himself, but he decided he wasn't going to walk away from it. He was going to stand up to it. And at the time when he set up Kick Racism Out of Football, he had a lot of pushback from the authorities in this country, and very often he would have to speak truth to power. But in doing so, he empowered other footballers to do the same thing as well, and he forced the game to actually see the problems that people have. We now have Kick It Out rather than Kick Racism Out of Football. But Lord Ouseley laid the foundations for the entire fight against discrimination that we now see. In Black History Month, a lot of people are celebrating other figures when right under our noses is the guy who made the game what it is today, and who sparked that awareness for people to have to see, if you were different, that you still belonged within this game in this country. He is one of the most significant figures in the modern game's history.
Wow, that's quite a safe statement, isn't it? And very true. I mean, it was all about underrepresentation for him, wasn't it? That's who he kind of like advocated for. He spoke it for everyone. It wasn't just about black players, was it? It was women, it was anyone that kind of were underrepresented.
Absolutely, because when he was doing that work within Kick Racism Out of Football, anybody who was different suddenly felt seen, suddenly felt there was somebody willing to actually shake the tree. We had a very, very stubborn, short-sighted FA that didn't see anyone who was different or didn't appreciate anyone who was different. And I have to be honest and say we had a media at that time that wasn't prepared to address the problems that we had. So a lot of the racist abuse that players have told us about, players were suffering from, people were having to endure, right-minded people were having to look and be sickened by, it was not going reported. And Lord Ouseley was the person who would speak truth to power and say, you will see us, you will address this, you will do something to make conditions for footballers better. A lot of the players that we celebrate now in this generation, their fathers would have gone through that kind of thing. And some of them might have a smile on their face and say, well, I wasn't too affected by it. But that was because they had to shake it off, not because it wasn't a problem. It was always a problem. This is the guy who fought for it. And the modern Kick It Out we see now, we might call him into studios or get him in our newspapers and get him to comment on this, that and the other. It wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Lord Ouseley.
I mean, just finally on this, what I really enjoyed about him is that he was, even at his age of 79, I mean, I was lucky enough to speak to him quite a few times, he wasn't satisfied.
No.
He was never satisfied with what we'd achieved. He always felt that there was so much more we could do, and I dare say would feel that right now.
Absolutely, because for many years I'd heard the phrase, we've made great strides in this country, and it would be used to minimise and apologise, or not even apologise, to dismiss some of the very real problems that the modern player was going through, is going through. We see it at so many levels of our game. We've spoken before on this very show about the inadequacy of the tools available to actively fight racism in this country, which is why low-profile players still feel that they're not being seen. Whereas Lord Herman Ouseley around in his pomp, he would be speaking on behalf of those players, whether they're A-list players in the Premier League, whether they're grassroots players who don't have that profile. He was out there fighting, and the best legacy he could leave is for us to remember that the fight against racism goes on. Just because we're not seeing high-profile cases right now doesn't mean there are footballers out there, people out there, there are men, there are women, there are people who are different within our football ecosystem who either don't feel seen or don't feel adequately represented. He was a guy who would fight for them, and it's a reminder for us that we too have to fight for them as well.